You're listening to Women's Radio Station. It's Vicky from Solo Ventures with Vicky, and I'm incredibly excited to be on Kay's Talking Travel show in the Travel Hour. I'm at the Royal Geographical Society in Kensington right now, and I'm incredibly excited to talk to some legendary kick-ass women who are travelling and exploring around the world. So I'm here with Rosemary Brown. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. I'm very excited about today.
Yeah, me too. I mean, fantastic travellers, explorers, adventurers, just like yourself, really.
Thank you.
So you're a journalist, and you pen basically all those women, fantastic women, and their travels as well. And you also followed Nellie Bly around the world. Was it 22,000 miles you did yourself, and 26,000 miles she did? What was that like?
Well, that was amazing. So Nellie Bly was an American adventurer and journalist, and she broke all convention. She had the idea to go traveling around the world to beat the fictitious record of Phileas Fogg in Around the World in 80 days. She said to her editor that she would like to do this, and he said, "Oh, Nellie, that's a great idea, but I have to send a man. I have to send a man because you will need a chaperone and you'll have so many trunks they'll get in the way." And Nellie said, "Fine, send a man. I'm going to the competing newspaper, and let's just see who wins this race." Well, of course, the editor knew who was going to win the race, and he said, "Okay, Nellie, you're on." But even just being a female newspaper reporter was amazing then. She is considered to be the first woman proper newspaper reporter, not just doing social and fashion and all of that. And she also, I'd like to get this point across, because although she made this amazing journey, and it's the journey that I followed, the most astonishing thing she ever did was to convince the local authorities in New York that she was crazy enough to be admitted into a women's lunatic asylum on Blackwell Island in New York. She went there to uncover the atrocities that she heard were happening in there, and she lived in there, and she experienced the atrocities firsthand, and she also spoke to the other women there. And in the end, she said, if you weren't crazy when you went in, you would be when you went out. She wrote a book called 10 Days in a Madhouse, which brought about huge sweeping reforms in the way mentally ill and non-mentally ill people were treated. So that was her most astonishing achievement, in my opinion. And because of that, she is known as the pioneer of investigative reporting, the kind of reporting where they reveal atrocities or even just corruption, and also they give vulnerable people a voice. So she's my heroine.
Crikey, yes. Wow, she's not only uncovering like geographical and adventure spheres, but also on wider society as well. She's incredible.
Oh, yeah. She was a humanitarian as well. So she was a newspaper reporter, an adventurer, a humanitarian, and she is very connected with this event in a way, because one of the reasons we're celebrating this event this year is because it's the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage. And she was an American, and as a newspaper reporter, she wasn't a suffragist or a suffragette, but she interviewed all the key people. And in my opinion, since we're celebrating that 100 years of voting here, it's important to think of people like her that actually paved the way for women's independence through their own courage, their sense of adventure, their ability to bust through conventions, and to make moves and to make waves in a pretty totally male world.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough now being in this age, but I can't imagine what it was like there, and she was still pushing those boundaries. That's incredible. How important is it to have female heroines like her for younger generations and all generations really to look up to?
I think it's really important because I see her as such an inspirational person to think about, and the fact that she's a woman and that against all odds, really, she was able to achieve what she achieved in a time when women had their place, and their place was usually at home, but her place was on the front page of newspapers. So I think it's really important that we know that what she did, and all the women we're talking about today, which many from history, but we have contemporary adventurers here today like Felicity Aston, who we'll hear from later. I think it's essential to have them as as inspiring female role models. And they can inspire men too, and they can help to improve women's independence.
And what inspires you to keep pushing these challenges and exploring new places?
I love life, and I think Nellie Bly did too. And there's this whole world out there that we can explore. And as Shane Windsor said, only 16% of plants and animals have been discovered. There's a lot more to discover. I also, like you, love traveling, and it's my lifeblood in a way. So, and learning lessons and meeting people.
And what advice would you give to someone who is afraid of traveling on their own?
Well, my favorite saying is, leap and the net will arrive. Just go for it. And Nellie Bly said, if you put the right energy into something, you can achieve it. So basically, go for it. Life is not a rehearsal. This is it. Do it now. And if you want some encouragement, come to some meetings like this, join the Women's Adventure Expo, come and see what other people are doing, and you'll find, if you're afraid, you'll find that every single woman that has achieved things that they're set some of their goals, they were afraid too. Yes, of course, and there are tough times, but when you surmount them, then you're there.
So I'm here with Jackie Hill-Murphy. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, you just delivered a fantastic talk about following Victorian women's explorations, really, and following their trails. Where would you say was the hardest journey for you to undertake?
I think travelling the length of the Amazon River was probably the hardest because I didn't factor in the humidity. You can factor in the heat, but you forget the humidity. And when it's too hot to even bend over and pick up your bag, but you have to kind of fight against that because it's tough. You have to keep going, really. But that was hard work. Plus, on a survival level, trying to find clean drinking water and keep clean and find food and where to buy these extraordinary tickets to move on the next leg of the river, that was hard too.
Yeah. So these Victorian explorers are the real inspiration behind your adventures, really.
Yeah, they give me a really good purpose to travel because I believe that it's to do with the journey and not the destination. And it's just fantastic to follow in their footsteps and see what is still there that they would have seen that hasn't changed, and how they would have dressed and what they would have taken with them. That's interesting.
And so you highlighted as well that men were always interested in exploring the Nile and locations, whilst you're more into understanding cultures as well, which is fantastic.
Yes, that's what I've found. After the first few journeys, I realised, these women are really talking to the locals. They're taking themselves as a European to places where they've probably never seen a European. They're experiencing the same ancient ceremonies in a way, like drinking the chicha on the Amazon or butter tea in northern Ladakh. And I realised that is something that we don't realise. Exploration hasn't got to do with climbing a mountain or finding the source of a river, has it? It's to do with the culture.
And is there a moment of your travels that really sticks out to you and just think, wow, I'm so grateful to have been there?
Oh, definitely. Being on the Laguna Rimachi on the Amazon, which is the biggest lake in the Amazon. Very, very few people have ever been there because to get there you have to go down the River Pastaza, which is very treacherous. Very treacherous. And there's two hostile Indian tribes who would kill you, and on this lake there is pink dolphins and floating islands. It's so extraordinary, and I think I thought at the time, wow, I'm so lucky to be here and see this.
And what's next for you? I mean, you have loads of adventures more coming up.
What's next is the end of this year. I'm going to the Yanganates Mountains in the Andes in Ecuador. I'm going back to Ecuador because it's a great place to explore, and I'm going to try and find a lost Inca trail with 3 amazing middle-aged ladies, one of whom is Jo Bradshaw, the mountaineer. And we are going to go and follow the trail and see why Isabel Brooks died there within 3 days in 1930.
These are incredible. Like, literally, I'm here with my mouth open, like, wow. The escapades that you're just coming up together, and it's just fantastic. And I just remembered something in your talk as well. You highlighted that you started in your 50s as well.
Yeah.
So I just want to highlight to our listeners that you can travel whatever age, at any opportunity.
Of course, just look after your health. That's the most important thing, and you can do it.
So I'm here with Jo Bradshaw. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. I just enjoyed your wonderful lecture about the first woman who climbed Mount Everest. How did you feel following her footsteps?
Oh, it was absolutely amazing. And I am ashamed to say I didn't know a huge amount about her when I climbed in 2016. And just missed her in 2015. I was on the mountain when the earthquake happened in 2015. And she came out 6 months later to celebrate 40 years of her summit. So what a phenomenal individual she was. Absolutely amazing.
And so Junko is your role model, then, would you
She
say?
certainly is now, absolutely, because there are there's only a small handful of women who have actually climbed Everest or are involved in big mountains. So to have somebody so pioneering that you can really identify with. She hasn't given up her life for mountaineering. She has. She's managed to sort of do both. She has two children and a very supportive husband, and she had a full-time job when she started as well, and then made mountaineering her career and made an income out of it from doing talks and from leading. So very similar to what I do. So it's really humbling to be able to talk about somebody so incredible and to follow in her footsteps, because she was the first woman to summit all of the 7 summits of this world. So, and I'm trying to do that as well. Obviously not the first woman to do it, but I've done 5 out of the 7. So yeah, just trying to fundraise or raise funds for the next 2 or the last 2. So really interesting.
So you were talking before in your talk about mental health and some of the work that you do actually is to raise awareness and funds for mental health charities. Whilst climbing mountains, and if you're struggling at one point, how do you overcome that?
Oh gosh, a couple of ways. So I have 2 characters that I use for myself and also when I'm leading expeditions. And they're called Negative Nellie and Positive Polly. And they sit on one of my shoulders. So Negative Nellie is usually on my left and Positive Polly is on my right. And we all know what it's like, is that even if the body's willing, the brain can go, actually, no, I'm not really into this. And that's when Nellie starts chuntering away. And I physically flick her off, which is, I'm doing the sort of motion now, which is great for radio, but I sort of flick her off and then think about all the reasons I've chosen to do this. So a lot of the expeditions I do, I have chosen to be there. I've chosen to put myself in that situation. And on Everest in 2016, there was it's a very interesting environment because there's a lot of egos out there and a lot of peacock one-upmanship, and I'm not really into all of that. I just want to go and climb the mountain and meet really cool people. And I was just a bit done with the put-downs and the people who are insecure about who they are and then put it over onto you. And I was ready to walk off. I'd had enough. And then I thought the short-term pain of what I'm going through at the moment is insignificant compared to the long-term pain of the disappointment of me walking off. I couldn't give up. I was capable of climbing this mountain, so I just had to get on with it. And then you come away with this sort of feeling of elation and thinking, oh my gosh, I did that. And that will last with you for a lifetime. And that, for those few seconds of the white noise going on is just crazy. So I've managed to turn around a lot of my negativities into looking at the positive side of things. So when I'm scared of heights, I think about the good things that are holding me onto the mountain, all the positive things. If somebody is, being a little unkind, then I just think it's their insecurities that they're putting onto me. It's not actually about me. And just try and sort of work around things like that. So, yeah. It's. I think, we all have mental health as well as physical health. we just don't talk about it enough. And if we do talk about it, sometimes people see it as a negative. So I do talk about my own mental health and what I go through on expeditions. And my father passed away 6 months ago, and what I'd been through with that, and supporting my mum. So it's been quite a ride. But everybody is out there listening has probably got ups and downs.
Exactly.
And it's just trying to deal with it and being open about it, and then not feeling like you're a failure or you're weak. It's actually a strength.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do you have any advice for someone who's thinking about climbing a mountain or even travelling solo?
Yeah, first of all, just sign on the dotted line, book that ticket, and say yes now and work it out later. We have one life. Make the most of it.